The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today is Thursday, March 2nd, 2023. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to play two different clips for you in today's episode, and I'm not sure exactly how long the conversation around each of them is going to last. It may be the full episode. The first clip is a clip of one of my favorite artists of all time, none other than Kirk Franklin. If you know, you know what I mean? He's a gospel artist, but I mean, he's the man in terms of music and just he's all around dope. He put out a clip yesterday on Instagram that I think is absolutely phenomenal that debunks the idea that Christianity is a white man's religion. Now, here's why this is particularly important for our audience. We are living in a full-blown assault against civilization as we know it from people who call themselves Christian. Those people right now, those white evangelicals who are in a full-fledged push to overthrow this democracy and to install a theocratic fascist state. What does that mean? A Christian nationalist state. What does that mean? That means a state, a country, a nation, the United States of America having the ability to punish you with the force of law, actually send you to jail because you commit something white evangelicals consider to be sin. Now, that's a pretty broad category when you realize the white evangelicals who are in charge of this movement right now, they consider everything that doesn't fit neatly into the Republican Make America Great Again agenda to be sinful. They consider Dr. Jordan Peterson, who is one of the leading voices of this far-right fascist movement into theocratic fascism. He challenged the Pope. Right. Not so much. It's not a big deal that he challenged the Pope because I don't think the Pope is above being challenged. It's what he challenged him over on Twitter. The Pope made a post about social justice, about doing justice as an act of Christianity. And I want to read it for you because I want you to understand something very clearly in the context of this conversation about white Christianity versus black Christianity. We are most certainly dealing with a group of white evangelicals and Christian nationalists, the likes of Jordan Peterson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, that entire group of individuals who will target black Christians because we are fighting for justice. All right. So let me read this, and then I'll play the clip from Kirk Franklin. And I have a couple of other clips that I think are going to support what I'm saying. Many of them I've played for you before, but I just need people to understand this as we get ready to go into this particular conversation. It is the co-option of Christianity in particular that has empowered white supremacy through the ages. Right. It gives them the moral justification, so-called moral justification for all the evils that they have committed throughout history, particularly evils towards marginalized communities, especially the black community. Today, presently, it is the weaponization of Christianity that is being wielded against everybody. I don't care what you believe. I don't care what you don't believe. I don't care who you love, who you don't. I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you're straight. I don't care if you are a black, devoted Christian who spent their entire life serving the Lord Jesus Christ. And if you do not fall in line with what demands, the very demands coming from white evangelicals today, you will find yourself on the wall, so to speak. And actually, it's not even a figure of speech. We do literally have white evangelical pastors advocating for the murder of the LGBTQIA community. Do you think they're going to stop there? I mean, if you're one, I have to question your humanity and your Christianity if you are okay with that. But then I also have to question your intelligence if you believe that it's going to stop there. All right, here's the tweet thread, because I need people to see that above anything else, what's needed right now today is a level of solidarity that transcends and goes across every single identity, belief, religion, sexual orientation, gender identification. I don't care who you love. I don't care how you identify. I don't care what your pronouns are. I don't care what you believe. Every single group that is not supportive of the agenda of white Christian men, particularly rich, white, conservative Christian men, anyone who doesn't fall into that category, we are under attack. This is not hyperbole. Look at the books that are being banned across the country. Look at the people who are being fired from the school boards. Look at who's being targeted. And in every category of group that does not neatly fit into white Christian men or support white Christian men, we are being targeted. So it includes those of us who fight for social justice. I have to say that again. Please forgive the redundancy of my speech this morning, but it is urgent that you understand, if you are a black Christian and you think that you are safe in this country because you are a Christian, if you happen to stand up for black life, you are targeted as much as the LGBTQIA community, even as a Christian. And these white, I shouldn't have to tell you that or remind you of that simply because of the history of white evangelicals lynching us on Sunday mornings before they went to church. But we are living in a very peculiar time where the direct threat that is on the table of violence that's coming from the religious circles is pointed at a group that a lot of black folks, or too many black folks, particularly black Christians, join in the alienation of and the dehumanization of. There has to be solidarity across our beliefs. There has to be solidarity across our penchant for homophobia. Because I've just been noticing that, particularly on social media, Instagram to be specific, and I'll call out a couple of names when I get to this next segment, but there is a concerted effort to stir up the homophobia that's latent probably in every single community, but particularly in the black community, as a means of neutralizing any hopes of solidarity between the groups that are all under attack. It is the classic divide and conquer technique that colonizers have always used. And unfortunately, it is as effective today as it was in 1619. All right, here's the tweet that I mentioned in terms of the Pope and Jordan Peterson. The Pope tweeted earlier in the month of February, #social justice demands that we fight against the causes of poverty, inequality, and the lack of labor, land, and lodging, against those who deny social and labor rights, and against the culture that leads to taking away the dignity of others. This is a standard belief in the Catholic Church. Okay, it's not a belief that is as powerful as the pro-life movement in the Catholic Church, but social justice does run deep in the religious tradition of the Catholic Church. It simply does. And Pope Francis has pushed it to the front. Well, this is a response. I mean, and who could be against what the Pope just said there? Because every single one of us, unless you are living off of capital, unless you're living off your investments, every single one of us is labor. Of course, Dr. Jordan Peterson came in for the save for the white evangelicals. He said, there is nothing Christian about #social justice. And then he tries to minimize Christianity, saying redemptive salvation is a matter of the individual soul. Of course, they want God and Jesus to fix the individual person, but not the system that is breaking all of the people. I bring that particular tweet up before I play this clip from Kirk Franklin because I need you to understand, even those of us who may follow the Bible letter for letter, if we follow the Bible letter for letter, we would be on the side of social justice. And therefore, we literally, black Christians, are the targets of white supremacy, not just because we're black, but specifically because we're black Christians who are fighting for freedom and liberation and justice. And God forbid you're out here fighting for the liberation and freedom and justice for all people, including those who may not live the same lifestyle as you live. You most certainly are going to be targeted. I need black Christians and Christians of other hues other than the Caucasian persuasion. Not any white Christians. I need you to learn this too and get this. I need you to understand the level of solidarity that must be had across the board with every single group that is currently under attack from white supremacy and Christian nationalism. And one of the number one tools that is used to neutralize the power of the black church, Kirk Franklin addressed. The power of the black church to fight for justice, the power of the black church to fight on behalf of liberation, the power of the black church to rise above its own problems and fight on behalf of other marginalized groups. One of the leading attacks against us has been this notion that Christianity is a white man's religion. All right, there's your 10-minute introduction to this clip from Kirk Franklin.
To close out Black History Month, I want to celebrate a part of our story that revisionist history has led a false narrative about. Christianity for many is often seen as a white man's religion forced upon an oppressed and enslaved people by their oppressor. While acknowledging that to be an unfortunate truth, it is not the conclusion of the matter. The truth is, 1,500 years before the transatlantic slave trade and centuries before the rule of Constantine or the Council of Nicaea, there were Africans in the northern parts of the continent 15 years after the death of Christ preaching and sharing the teachings of the Middle Eastern Jew they called Jesus. The early fathers of the faith were black men named Origen, Augustine, Tertullian that predate their European counterparts by centuries. Yes, sir. Now, the weaponization of Christianity is an ugly, painful reality that marginalized people in this country continue to feel to this present day. And while we celebrate the historic contributions from white abolitionists like William Lloyd Garrison and Harriet Beecher Stowe, the duplicitous teachings from the blue-eyed stained glass windows of colonized temples remind us that the God of the Bible was not the God of this land. But the songs we sung through the darkest of nights, or the dream of Martin that shook the nation, make no mistake, Europe did not influence Africa. Africa influenced the world. Black history.
Now, I'm going to forgive my brother for having Kanye West, Jesus Walks playing in the background. Kanye's canceled because he's a Nazi, but I get it. It's fine. Yeah, that's important. That's important because right now in the fight against white evangelical Christian nationalists, the best weapon that this country has are black liberationists. Black Christians who fight on behalf of the liberation of all people. Because what is happening is that underneath the auspices of freedom of religion, white evangelicals are taking this whitewashed, co-op, weaponized version of Christianity and not only they've been wielding it as a bludgeoning tool, but they're using it to change the legal system. They're using it to change this democracy into something that has the ability to punish people by law with the force of law because some white evangelical doesn't approve of their lifestyle. This is not hyperbole. A recent Pew Research poll just in 2022 showed that 65% of white evangelicals agree with the following statement. If they conflict, the Bible should have more influence than the will of the people on U.S. laws. 65% of white evangelicals believe that their particular interpretation of the Bible should have more influence on our legal system in this country than the majority of the people. Which version of Christianity are they going to wield, black Christians? Not one that is going to be favorable to you simply because you are a Christian. It is the black portion of your faith that is problematic to white evangelicals because the black portion of your faith demands liberation, if for nobody else, but for black people. And that's a problem to white evangelicals, to Christian nationalists. Don't believe me? Listen.
I am sick and tired of allowing black people to get away with calling themselves Christians, and they're just black.
That was Pastor Dave Daubenmire, who was so frustrated with black people who fight for social justice that he melted down on his show, Pass the Salt Live, on a YouTube show. He has hundreds of thousands of supporters, and this is just one example of how black Christianity falls outside of the purview of white evangelicals. I shouldn't have to put this urgency in black Christians from this perspective of self-preservation, because we should feel the urgency of defending other people because of the liberation spirit that is in us. However, I need to make that distinction because of what I'm going to talk about in the next segment, which is an overwhelming push on social media, particularly Instagram, by Black influencers to spread right-wing propaganda that is specifically designed to divide any possibility of solidarity from between Black people and the LGBTQIA community, as if there aren't any gay and lesbian, transgender Black people, right? It's only that transgender Black people are the leading group of people being killed disproportionately, right? So we should care about all Blackness, but it's something about that aspect of Black Christianity where so many things we could be doing good gets caught up in the fact that we still have homophobia so deeply rooted in us. And I say us because I am a recovering homophobe, right? It is in us. And if we are not careful, white supremacists know exactly how to get us to stand down on our fight for justice when we should be standing up and unifying with every single group that is under attack. White evangelical Christianity is a threat to this nation. Christian nationalism, its other name, is a threat to this nation. It is a threat to us as individuals. I don't care what you believe. If you do not bow down at the false god of white supremacy, you are targeted by this group, which tells me that every group that is under attack individually by white nationalists, Christian nationalists, and white evangelicals should be unifying in solidarity. And one of the reasons we can't do it is because as soon as Black Christians stand up, we get attacked for supporting a white man's religion. Thank you, Kirk, for bringing that out. Kirk actually talked about the Council of Nicaea and Constantine's co-option of Christianity. He actually talked about it on one of his albums on a spoken word bit. If I can find the link to it, I will. But the main point is this. There is a vested interest and a concerted effort in making sure that Black liberation theology, the theology, the reading of the Bible that literally requires us to make sure that every group is as free as we want to be. Liberation. That is the biggest threat to white Christian nationalism. And that's why they want to make sure that one of two things happens. Either Black Christians never stand up because we're afraid of being labeled as serving a white man's religion, or the homophobia that is rampant across this country in religious circles and in various communities, including the Black community, keeps us from unifying with every single group that is under attack by the same white Christian nationalists. If colonizers don't know anything, they know how to divide and conquer. I want to move on to the next conversation. It is about Instagram influencers sharing right-wing propaganda. Black Instagram influencers sharing right-wing propaganda and doing it underneath the very categories that right-wingers are using right now to attack and honestly lead to the deaths of LGBTQIA members of our community. Okay, the shooting at Q nightclub, the killings the bomb threats at the children's hospitals. These came as a result of the right-wing propaganda that is categorizing every gay person, every LGBTQIA person as a pedophile or as a groomer. And the content that is being shared by the likes, I can call the names, Hollywood Unlocked, Baller Alert. Some of my favorites. I love DL Hewley, but he's been caught up sharing some right-wing content that stirs up the homophobia and transphobia in the Black community, as you can see in the comments section, and forwards the right-wing agenda of attacking the LGBTQIA community, as well as forwarding the agenda of attacking the black community. Earthquake, the comedian Earthquake, he actually shared some stuff too recently. Now, let me be specific. D.L. Hewley and Earthquake both shared the story, the recent story. I don't know if you recall the story of Aretha Franklin's I Feel Like a Natural Woman being challenged and trying to be so-called canceled by a fake trans group. It was a fake trans group that actually came out and admitted that what they were doing was fake. It was picked up by the New York Post, which is a right-wing conservative rag, and then it was disseminated somehow magically at the same time to a host of black influencers on Instagram. And then in the comment section across all of them at the same time, you saw the transphobia that was just brewing in every community. I'm not going to let you guys try to alienate and say black folks have some unique kind of level of homophobia or transphobia. No, it's a universal plague here on this planet. OK, right. But to see the comment section, you would realize, holy crap, this is one of the most insidious and most effective forms of propaganda, because it is using black influencers, whether they know it or not, black influencers to peddle right-wing propaganda that's not only harming the LGBTQIA community, it's directly harming the black community. How? Because the same exact groups that are spreading these lies about grooming, that's spreading this propaganda about the LGBTQIA being pedophiles. Two things. The same groups that's spreading that propaganda, number one, they're trying to get every black history book canceled. They're trying to stop the teaching of black history, literally. They are in Florida banning AP African American history. They're taking black books off of bookshelves. And apparently the only thing that you need to do to get black people to co-sign some black people, I'm a little ticked this morning, so I might, do a whole categorical statement, but understand I'm talking about a very specific group. But the only thing that you need to do to get that group to co-sign with Nazis is to tell them that there's some gay content in the library too, or to tell them that there's some quote unquote grooming content in the libraries too. And then the second thing that you got to understand is that the same group that's spreading this propaganda, they are guilty themselves of levels of child grooming, sexual assault, and molestation at levels we cannot even imagine when you consider the Southern Baptist Church, the Mormon Church, and you consider the Catholic Church. Okay? So I need you to understand the people pushing this agenda. One, they are projecting their own violence, their own grooming, their own sexual predilections onto an entire community. They're scapegoating the LGBTQIA community and simultaneously getting black folks on Instagram and across social media to show and flare up their transphobia and to co-sign with the very fascists who are trying to destroy black history. I'm on one today, but you know I'm preaching. Here's a clip that was shared by Hollywood Unlocked. It is a social media company that is valued at about $50 million. They just got $1.7 million in seed investment reported in January. I'm thinking we're still in February, but in January, it's headed up by Jason Lee. He seems to be a decently cool cat. I wonder why, though, stuff like this clip that I'm getting ready to share, it is of an 11-year-old boy who is at a school board meeting. Clearly, I want you to pause and consider everything that has happened at school board meetings as it pertains to book bannings. It is headed up and led by Moms for Liberty. They are trying to get every book that is not a nice, neat Christian evangelical book, including African American history books, banned out of the libraries.
This book was on a stand. I'd like to read you a page. My back over my hips as I ask if we should take our clothes off, and he's saying yes before I finish my sentence. He's pulling off my t-shirt, laughing when I can't undo his shirt buttons. He's undoing my belt. I'm reaching into his bedside drawer for a condom. We're kissing again. We're rolling over. Obviously, you can see where this is going. I don't know if it's because we're feeling especially emotional or just tired, or these past couple of weeks have been too much. But this reminds me so much of the first time we had sex. We were both terrified, and the whole thing was kind of terrible because we didn't know what we were doing. But it was good too, so good, because we were a mess of emotions, and we were scared and excited, and everything felt new. So this sort of thing This sort of feels like that. Nick touches me like he's scared that any minute. Now, this book was at my middle school, and it was on a stand. When I rented it out to show my dad it, the librarian asked if I wanted more and if I wanted a graphic novel version.
Librarian. I'm sorry. I'm going to do my best not to be a butthole. I was reading comments and someone was like, oh my goodness, he's 11 and he's reading all those words so well. My 5-year-old can read that, but I digress. That's not the point. And I'm sorry for being an asshole to this kid. Okay. Cause he's clearly put up there by his parents who are clearly affiliated with the very groups that are going around this country trying to get books banned. God forbid you go to a library and there happens to be books in there that are above your maturity level or above your comfort. Okay? Because as we all know, the library has to only keep books that are perfectly suited for every 11-year-old. But number two, how is this an example of grooming? How is this an example of pedophilia? How is this is an example of something that should be terrifying? So much so that we should take that book and Black history books out of the library and burn them together. Because what I'm hearing in that passage, which I am 100% sure if there was a worse or a more egregious passage in that book, they most certainly would have read that. Now, let me keep it 100. Would I want my 10-year-old, my 11-year-old reading that? Probably not, especially if I'm not given a chance to talk to them about it. Do I want that book removed from the library on the off chance that my kid actually gets a chance to read that book? Absolutely not. But if you look in the comment section, underneath all of these super influential Black influencer pages on Instagram, you would think that this book was talking about somebody getting their back blown out. Like you would think it was an erotic novel. You would think it was something so egregious that we need to be okay with the wholesale banning of all books as headed up by groups like Moms for Liberty, as headed up by groups like the Proud Boys, the Boogaloo Boys, by people like Ron DeSantis. Black folks are finding themselves in league with Nazis and fascists because of our gay panic. And somebody in the comment section on Friday night during the live show gave me that phrase. I'm sure it's a phrase before them, but I really hadn't thought of it. Is the gay panic. It is the groomer panic, as fostered and fomented by the likes of Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro, and the rest of the conservative so-called intellectuals who have invested their entire life into attacking the LGBTQIA's community's right to simply exist. And the twofer is they get some Black folks to co-sign on our own destruction, the destruction of our history, the banning of our books, because there happens to be some either gay content or some mature content that's above a child's pay grade. But if you want to keep it 100 for real, I bet you if you go check that kid's browser history, it contains stuff 100 times worse than what he just read in that book. If you're really worried about grooming, don't ban books. You need to ban some of these churches, some of these preachers, some of these pastors who are out here grooming people and ruining the childhood of hundreds of children. But they're not concerned about that because they go to those churches, mind you.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions. Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Welcome back. So yeah, as you can tell, I've kind of had it with that particular narrative and that particular propaganda technique of using Black social media influencers to spread the soft, and I'm calling it the soft propaganda from the right, because there is it's laundering is probably the best way to describe it. They're laundering the propaganda from the right because it removes the clear purpose of the entire bit of quote unquote activism, right? The entire all the performances that we've seen at school board meetings have been directly connected to the right-wing conservative agenda in this country to use the force of law to punish people they disagree with, to remove Black history. And we must always connect those two things, people. You cannot sever the attack on Black history from the attack on the LGBTQIA community. You can't, because it's coming from the same source. You may think we don't have anything in common, as if we don't have gay Black people, but I digress. We've talked about that plenty of times. You may not feel that we have a fight in common. But when I tell you that the ideology of the mass shooter at the Q nightclub is one and the same with the ideology of the man who shot up the Buffalo Tops grocery store in the Black community, that shot up Mother Emanuel AME. God dog it, that's my music. I don't want to go yet, but that's it for the public show. Patreon.com/the BPD show if you want access to the next half.